Hi Homeworthy, welcome to my home in London. Please come in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi, I'm Virginia White. Welcome to my home in London, England. I'd like to show you around. We've been here for roughly 2.5 years. We're super happy. We used to live in a big house in Islington where we had our 3 children. And when the children left, we decided to make a change and we moved to something completely different. And when we first saw this flat, we weren't intending to buy a flat. We were actually looking for a house. We simply fell in love with it. It was a completely blank canvas, and the flat belonged to quite a well-known fashion photographer who loved the light in it and the space. So it's at the front here in this room, it's northeast facing. So that's a very, very steady light. And for me, I'm a big art collector. Actually, northeast facing light is absolutely fantastic. So that was a win-win. When we came in, that was very sort of minimally decorated and very, very simple. And I could really imagine us living here. And I was also really loving the challenge of having far less rooms to fill, but each room serving more purposes. So for example, this room is a multi-purpose room, which we never had in our previous house. So it's a living room, it's a dining room, it's a study, it's a library. I've got my studio going off it. It's all sort of merges. I've whipped out most of the doors so that it flows. I painted most of the walls the same colours. Either it's timeless as a colour from Dulux, which I love. It's a very sort of, well-balanced white. And then in places like the hallway, I use a Edward colour called French Grey, which has got that lovely greeny, soft grey, a little bit sagey, which is sort of, warmer than a grey. And green is also a superb colour to have for indoor, and it works with all my pictures. There's no clash. So yeah, we bought this flat, renovated it for a few months. We've been so happy here. We simply don't need that many rooms. We need a large bedroom, we need a large living area and a guest bedroom and a few bathrooms and a studio and a kitchen. And that for our life now is absolutely perfect. But the greatest thing is the proximity to Hampstead Heath, which is just a godsend. It's over 700 acres of countryside and wilderness where, dogs can run freely. You have high grasses, meadows, ponds, woodland, Kenwood House, endless things to do. So it really feels, this location, as if it's almost like a hybrid between London, a huge city, and the countryside. It's quiet, it's still, it's got a village-like atmosphere, and it's next to the heath. So for us, it ticks all the boxes. We're total Londoners. We can rush off to the, to a gallery, to the theatre, to a restaurant, to the pub. We don't need to make a huge amount of plans in advance, and at the same time we can go for daily walks. So we're very happy here. So here we're in the living room, the heart of the flat really, and right at the core of it we have Moss, our 15-year-old whippet, sitting on a knoll sofa. And the cushions that I have around, you'll see, are all sort of, quite interesting, and they are done by this incredible artist called Rose de Boorman, who I collect, and I adore her work. And I met Rose probably 14, 15 years ago, and she was a printmaker, she's also a painter, and she's now also a potter and a jewellery maker, so really sort of everything. And I was so impressed by Rose's work, and particularly her sort of, mythical stories of animals and her depictions of nature. I love it so much that I asked Rose to create a fabric for my Virginia White collection. So that was the very first fabric. It was called Forest. I'll show that to you as well. So then a lot of what I've got in this home is just eclectically put together. Nothing was bought at one specific time, sort of, well, everything was bought at a specific time, but nothing was really coordinated on a plan. These are just things that either I already had or I bought some of them for the room. This sofa I did buy for this room. I like the thought of something contemporary, modern, relaxed, and quite luxurious. So it's a Knoll sofa by Piero Lissoni. I think he's a fantastic modern designer, and it's extremely comfortable. I know that white isn't always the best color to have for a family sofa, but I have a lot of fleeces and all sorts of things hanging over it, and this lovely old 18th century Swedish woven cloth, which I brought back from Maine recently, and I put that there, and that protects the back nicely. This is a funny old table I found in Hampshire. It's a pig's trough from a field, so rusty legs from a pig feeding trough, and a farmer found this old piece of completely battered up marble. And anyway, it just sits on top of these legs, and it's one of my favorite pieces of furniture. I find it super modern. It's almost sort of Giacometti-like with those legs, but it's putting it together is something completely different to what we see now. I wanted to talk a little bit about this artist called John de Pauli, who's a really good friend of mine and somebody I admire enormously. He started out as a stonemason, then went to Chelsea Art College, and he works across bronze. He is a lovely dancer. Stone, that's a stone piece. Here's another beautiful piece of fossilized Portland stone as an egg, and it's just so simple. It's Brancusi-like simplicity, which I adore. And then this is one of my all-time favorites. It's called Starman, and it reminds me of a Tangali. So there are lots and lots of things that remind me of big international European artists, and I just think he's very, very talented, and I love it. So we'll see a lot of his work. Here on the table is somebody I'm very fond of, somebody called Tim Scott. He was the pupil of Anthony Caro, but really was one of Britain's greatest mid-20th century sculptors, and he's still going strong. And I went to his exhibition just the other day, and I was just amazed how powerful his work was. And I think in the mid-80s he had his real heyday. So I'm very pleased to have that. I inherited it from my uncle in Cologne, who was a big modern art collector, so that was super lucky. Here's a fabric from our collection. It's the Ola fabric, which is on one of our little footstools. The table is a Morris table that was designed by me and is a nod to sort of, Moorish tables. And a lot of the furniture from my collection has a sort of looking back and looking forward at the same time. So that'll be looking at sort of, Anglo-Indian tables or Moorish tables, but it's got a pop element by being done in lacquer and simplifying everything. The same with this tray top table, again, something in my collection. It's super pop, but at the same time, the skinny legs are a nod back to Georgian and Regency furniture making with those lovely bronze casters. Again, the Temple House sofa is part of our collection as well. So I sort of mix in my own pieces, which have a sort of feeling of both modernity and something traditional and old. And that's really something that I love most, which is this mixing it all up and just seeing how it goes. Sometimes it works really well, sometimes it doesn't. And then here, this is one of my favorite corners. I think that's one of my favorite corners, probably this one in the whole house. And it's, again, it's a marriage of, things that really have no connection to each other normally, but I've made them have a connection, and I think they connect so beautifully. This was one of the first pictures that I bought when I decided I wanted to be a bit of a collector. It's by an artist called William Scott. He was a big St. Ives group painter, and it'll be sort of 1950s roundabout, and I think it's wonderful. And then I inherited this steel work from my father, and it was by an artist, a Berlin artist called Achim, and I only have had this now for 2 years, and it just works so perfectly. The shapes of, the grids, the scratching, the circles, the ovals. It's just almost like they were made for each other. And when the sunlight comes in the morning, it hits off that metal, and it sort of gives a lovely sort of almost aluminium sheen throughout the room, which I love. Then these houses, I spotted them. We went and rented a house on Mull, and it was a very, very lovely house called Kalakali House. And the owner is a huge collector, and he had a similar set like these. And he told me where the artist lived, and the artist is called Rowena Brown, and she works on Iona. Now, my eldest daughter is called Iona, and she's named after this island, which is a very, very, very beautiful and mythical and sacred island. Some people say the most sacred island in the world. And we all went as a family when Iona when she was tiny, but she couldn't remember. And then when she was about 27, we all went, and we went to this artist, and we bought this collection of houses, which I can rearrange as and when. So that's really nice. And then here on the mantel shelf, so this is a jam piece. It's designed by Sir John Soane. It's called the Dulwich. This is a copy of something that would have been at the Dulwich Picture Gallery in London. And when we came to this flat, it had an Edwardian dark brown and red sort of tiled, high, imposing mantelpiece, and I just didn't like it, although it was actually part and parcel of the period of this building. And see, I think you don't need to really always be completely enslaved to period features if you don't like them. So I took that out and put this in, and I think it looks so much better in the space because it's low and wide, and means sort of seating low is much more comfortable. The fire is wonderful in winter. We use it the whole time. And then here I've just got a funny medley. Again, this is my big thing. I love just putting things together that are precious to me. On the mantel shelf, you often have things that just are a bit special and a bit, delicate, that you don't want on a table where they might be sort of knocked off. So the most precious of this is an old Mycenaean, it's a find from a child's grave, which I inherited from my archaeologist father. It's about 3,500 years old. It's incredibly valuable to me, really. And these would have been like little dolls. So for children, you obviously wanted to put something into the grave that sort of, might be something that reminded of their childhood. And so they potted these dolls and decorated them, and then these little oil vases too. This is a little Roman head, which I inherited from a dealer friend of my dad's. And it's an old Ming vase. This is a wonderful Rachel White Reed work, which is a Romanesque church, which has got hole punches through it, which sort of, jazzes it up. And my lovely John de Pauli egg. This is so special. I've got a very, very talented sister called Philippa Kunish, and she works in porcelain, and this is unglazed porcelain, and she's made the little delicate markings all over it. She was very inspired by Edmund de Waal, and went ahead and has created this collection of porcelain pieces. They're so delicate, sometimes I get really worried having them here. Here's a deer, there's a tree. This is a lovely old Romanesque ram's head, which is an incense burner. Little oil panel from the Hudson Valley. I brought it back from Nantucket last year. I just saw it and I just thought it's so beautiful. Again, no connection to anything else, just a great piece. And then these old 1720s mocha mugs. They would have been pint mugs or ale mugs in a pub. And they're just really, really lovely. And I'm so happy to have them. Generally, obviously you can see all my pictures. They seem to make no rhyme or reason. To me, they make a huge amount of rhyme and reason. That's a Bridget Riley. I coveted that piece for a long time. It's one of her iconic black and white perspex pieces that she did in '65. And I just think for something so simple, which is just dots on perspex with white behind it, it's so incredibly powerful. And I felt it's a wonderful juxtaposition, and it holds its own place so well against this dark browny blacky blue and steel work. I needed something to balance it, and I felt, boy, that one can do it really, really well. This is a piece by Maria Casper-Filzer, which I inherited from my grandparents, and I remember seeing it on the wall in our holiday house on the Bavarian lakes, and I always loved it. And it went through my parents, and then it finally came to me. And now I know the story behind it a little bit more. My grandfather actually didn't tell me. So the artist was really deemed by Hitler as a degenerative artist. So all of her works, which had been in public galleries, were taken away and destroyed. And her life was in peril. She somehow survived. And she had no works pre-1950, really. And this is one of the first works that she created. She was a very important artist. She was the first female professor of the Munich Secession of Art, and it's of the probably Tyrolean or Bavarian Alps. And it's very typical of that landscape. And I'm just so happy with it. And again, this whole thing was not planned. All the fabrics were not planned. I had these on really for a photo shoot I was doing with Christopher Farr fabrics, and I just kept it on. And I stood back and I thought, that's strange. They all match up somehow, and that's actually fun. I love these sort of accidental things, really, that can happen. Here's my other whippet. And Moss sometimes could get jealous. It's so well done. It's by somebody called Olive Wootton, who I think is brilliant, the way she works on animals. And I mean, couldn't be more moss-like or more whippet-like if it tried. So that sits there. Please follow me into the dining space. So it's obviously all one big room, which is lovely, and it's a first for us, actually. It's to have books, which we love, and a fire on, the living room, and then to be sitting and dining amongst it is just, it's a real joy. And having these wonderful windows overlooking that copper beach. It's just, you know, it's a great room, to be honest. I'm very, very lucky, or we are very lucky. So here, I did buy this for this particular flat. I found this table in the Cotswolds. It's a Italian monastery table, and I thought it's great having something quite long, but therefore also quite slim, and it contrasts nicely to these super modern 1960s Vizzo bookcases, which obviously can weigh, you know, hold a ton. I used a very, very simple 1960s light over the table just to sort of lighten it up a little bit, because if you have too much brown furniture, which It's difficult, actually, a space like this in one way because you've got the brown floorboards. I've got quite a few antique pieces of furniture. It can end up being a little bit brown and heavy, and I don't want that. I actually love having things that are a little bit irreverent, bit of modern art, bit of punches of color. And when I lay my table, I often have brilliant bright tablecloths and multicolored crockery service as well, just so it brightens the whole thing up, and it's quite fun. Here on the dining room chairs, so actually here, this is lovely. I brought this back in my suitcase from Maine a couple of years ago. I was shopping in a wonderful antique shop of a friend in Wiscasset called Helen Robinson, and this was her husband, who was actually a really good rug dealer, a late husband's rug, and I bought it, and it's a Kazakh. And I just think, oh my God, it just works so perfectly. All the colors brighten things up. So that's come a long way. And then this chest was something that we found in Tetbury before moving to the flat. And when I saw it, I thought this is a great room divider. And then the funny thing is, it's carved RW 1819. My husband is called Robin White, and inside it, it's filled with pictures that haven't found a home yet. So it's a treasure trunk, quite literally. It is what it's supposed to be. So here on these Marcel Breuer Cheska chairs, I've got lots and lots of the Virginia White collection fabrics as just sort of seating pads. They're scattered all around, each one different. It's something that I'm passionate about, which is colour and fabric, and also making things well in England. So these are woven in Sudbury at the oldest weavers in Britain. And I can show you there's lots and lots of different designs darting around. So again, I don't like to be super precious with things. And you'll see the way I do my curtain treatment and my walls is very simple. I let the fabrics and the art do all the talking. Really, they are the sort of dashes of colour. But here really is another sort of favourite area of mine, because it's got my lovely collection of Seth Cardew pottery. I collect Michael Cardew, Seth Cardew, Bernard Leach, if I can, and Trevor Corser, and really the St. Ives potters who went to Japan and were influenced by a lot of the Japanese potting there and the glazes. I just absolutely love it. Here is my lovely John de Pauli sculpture, Charlotte Mellis, house with corrugated roofing, and just such a mixture. Here I've got a wonderful Ben Nicholson drawing, which I acquired a long time ago. He made the frame himself, so he framed a lot of his own work. So the whole frame, the paper behind it, all of that is super important as well. And it just gives it that lovely patina. It's not shiny, it's not flat. It's almost the beginning and the end of the work is actually from here to here rather than just what's on the paper. And I love that. Another St. Ives person called Brian O'Casey. Brian O'Casey, I met him through a friend, and I bought it from him direct. He just handed it to me, and I bought this wonderful bird. I'm really, really, really fond of that. Having enough wall space is always the crisis for me. I have so many pictures, and sadly it's a semi-addiction. I'm always acquiring new things. I'm always looking on auctions, or see something in a gallery. But I do have a particular love or core that comes through, and that's called modern British. So I've got Bridget Riley and David Hockney, Howard Hodgkin, Henry Moore, Brian O'Casey, and Ben Nicholson. These are really, and William Scott, of course, these are really names that are core people of what we call modern British. And so what I love is not just for me to have the visual relationship between pictures, but also that there is a real tenuous relationship between the artists. So many of them might have been friends or teacher and pupil or influenced by somebody. And I just love that there's the connection that I've given them, which is I've brought them together, but also that there are sort of, deep founded friendships or artistic community and relationships behind that. And I think that's really lovely. So here I've just got a nice medley of things. Here's a lovely John Wells picture, which I love. And these are really what you would call modern British. So my father was a museums director in Bochum, and he was a classical archaeologist, and he collected huge amount of antiquity from all over the world to create this museum. And he worked with a great friend of his who was an art historian, and he collected very, very modern art. And they combined the two, and it was just such a marriage of creativity, putting these things together. Nowadays, that's much more commonplace. But when they did this in the 60s, it was really, really new and bold. I think I took a lot from that. So I went on and I studied history of art at St Andrews University, which I loved. And after that, I came down to London and I worked a bit for Sotheby's. And then I worked for an antiquity dealer, and then I went to Venice and worked for the Guggenheim Museum, and I kind of thought I would be in that museum's world or that dealer world. But Venice actually was a big turning point for me. I fell in love with the interiors, the richness of fabrics, the light, how it falls into houses, the different floors, just the beauty of Venice. I mean, how can you not fall in love with that? And I thought, no, I'm going to work on interiors. So I applied to Chelsea College of Art and I studied as an interior designer, and then applied to a really amazing interior designer in Britain, somebody called John Stefanidis, where I was trained. And I stayed there for 2.5 to 3 years, learning really about cabinet making and, bespoke interiors. I think that taught me a lot. A little later, I worked for other people and then I set up on my own. And really the type of interiors I create for people and my best clients, or some of my dearest clients, are people that I've been working for maybe even 2 decades. Interiors and their interiors, my interiors, really evolve the whole time. So as I'd love to show you around my home, you'll see that I'm really a collector. And it's belongings, it's my collections, it's treasure that I find, and the way I put it together that really creates my interior. The building itself is not that remarkable. It's, a biggish room, it's got white walls, it's got high enough ceilings, but there's nothing incredibly remarkable. It's really the things that fill it, that give it the atmosphere. And for me, an interior is never finished. For me, being a collector, sadly, is never finished. I mean, my husband sort of complains that, no, is there more stuff coming into the house? Where's that going to go? But things are in flux, things are moving around. And I think my dearest clients appreciate that about me, that I spot things suddenly and I say, I've got something for you, this is great, or their homes are evolving. So this is really my little mini hub home office. I get a lot achieved here. It's not huge, but it actually gives me everything that I need. A quiet space that's still connected to the big space. And I run my interior design and my fabric collection, or fabric wallpaper, and furniture collection, Virginia White collection, really from here. One of my great joys, again, I bought it for this apartment, is this Howard Hodgkin. It's called Venice Evening. I bought it, I think it was Sotheby's, and it was still in the portfolio. So the printer probably hadn't sold this particular one, and it was 16 leaves. So you get 4/4 leaves of, let's say, A3. And they're numbered on the back, and they're hand-coloured plates, and it would never have been framed. And I just thought, I've always loved that. I used to live in Venice when I worked for the Guggenheim, and I just thought bringing something like that into here, this is a dark space, it's my studio space or my study space, actually saying that that's Venice evening. Because of these 16 panels, it's almost like a window grill or window panels. So it's my window onto Venice in the evening, and then I always say that's my English window onto the Copper Beach, looking up towards Highgate and St Anne's Church. So that's really lovely. Here is a little relic of John Stefanidis. It's an old John Stefanidis fabric, which I remember when I was working with John Stefanidis, for some reason, a lot of his fabrics arrived on the table in the studio in Chelsea, and we were, as staff, all allowed to take them. I think maybe they were remnants, or that part was sort of being archived. I can't remember. And I remember taking this, and we lived in Canterbury Square at the time. I rolled it up. I had 7 meters, and I put it in the attic, and I forgot all about it until 30 years later, or 32 years later. I needed a room divider, and I thought, that's 7 meters. That's been in the attic for 32 years. It's just going to do fine. And I just love it. These chairs I inherited. I just put some new fabric on it. It's a New York person's fabric, which I think is really, really lovely. It's a quiet space, and yet I feel I'm connected to the bigger space. And I love it, actually. It's cozy. It's exactly the right amount of space for me. And it means I can work from home doing my interior design, and also managing my Virginia White collection, which does fabrics and wallpapers and furniture. And again, I've got lovely pictures. That's a Herman Bachmann, that's an Augustus John, and this is Brian Ilsley, a wonderful abstract piece. So I surround myself with art at all times, and I think that is the original inspiration for a lot of my work. So a lot of my fabrics are really, their original starting point comes from colors or shapes that I've seen in art, and I want to somehow reproduce them. And a lot of my art, I try and create patterns which feel almost like they're not on repetition. They almost feel like, so often the width of the fabric is the whole width of the pattern, and the vertical repeat might be well over 1 meter, which means it feels almost like an original artwork on a fabric. So that's really what I love doing. This is quite a fun detail. So this was another bedroom, and we knocked it through, and my girls called it Marble Arch. And so we've always said that's quite nice. And I just thought it makes it different to the doorway. It gives it a little bit of solidity. I'm a great marble fan. Always have marble in my kitchens, always have marble in bathrooms. It's a cool, gorgeous stone. And again, it's sort of scribbling all over it. It's just fab. I think I'm a sort of creative person myself, and I don't make a home to impress others. I am obviously must be very particular. You know, you kind of think, about yourself that you're not, but I think I am. So for example, somebody rearranges things, I will spot it straight away. I'm really very, very particular. And that's something that I've learned. One of the other influences, very, very big influence in my life, is Kettle's Yard in Cambridge. So when I was younger, my father did various sabbaticals in Cambridge at Clare College. We grew up in Cambridge during that time, and my parents would take us to Kettle's Yard, which is this wonderful home museum in Cambridge, now open to the public, but it belonged to a collector who was also an art historian called Jim Eade. And really what Kettle's Yard taught us is the eclectic mix of art, furniture, high art, low art, things just found, things, you know, like a feather in a broken glass, arranged in a certain way. And I think it appealed to many, many people. It was revolutionary in the 50s in Britain when people didn't decorate like this at all and probably didn't really understand it. Now, for many people, it's become a mecca, of course. For my own family and for myself, it was a really important influence. And I think the way I mean, things like, for example, on my mantel shelf, it's such a variety of things that I've just got there. And I haven't paired things so much that they're one period of belongings or they're one colour. It's almost the shapes, and yes, it is the colours, their tone, their patina, and the way that their relationship with each other. And yet, actually, if you look at them, they have nothing to do with each other in isolation, but together they almost form a picture in itself. So it's almost like I'm being creative with other people's belongings in the way that I put them together. It's my jumbling up of stuff, which is sort of, you know, almost using my eye and making it unique. And that's something that I encourage in interior design, and I find sort of really prescriptive interior design is less interesting. You know, I'm not really somebody who is a boutique hotel interior designer. My design is led by belongings, by collections, by objects really, and by art. So enough of this small space. So let's go to Romy's room. Okay, so here we are in my daughter's Romilly's room. And Romilly is a very, very good daughter because she allows me to essentially put all my pictures up on the wall, and she even says nice things about them. So one of the pictures that's her all-time favourite, probably because of Moss, is this dog by Elizabeth Frink. And Romy always says, if anything was to happen, Mummy, and I had to leave this house, that's the one thing I would take. So that's pretty cute. So here really is everything, all her big wardrobe housed in there. Again, I've put a lot of my pictures. One of my favourite pieces, again, which connects to the one in the living room, is that Bridget Riley black and white perspex, iconic piece really from the mid-60s that really made Bridget Riley so famous. It was sort of the original of op art, something that has got, you look at a picture and it seems such a simple shape, but the movement does something to your eyes. So it gives a sort of constant movement to the eye. And I love that. Here's another wonderful Rose de Bourman picture. I mean, she really is ridiculously talented. Each of her works, or each work of hers and Pillow, is an original. So the detail in this is just great, and she's just a phenomenal colorist. We've got a couple of Virginia White Collection fabrics. So this is one of ours called Rose did for us, called the North Sea. It's only a tiny section of it, but it just shows how you wouldn't almost guess that we produce these by the yard or by the meter when they look almost like original works. Here is the mossy fabric. It's called Whippets, of course, and we've printed it on many, many different colors. One of our zigzags, our oleander fabric. So I do mix in a lot of the Virginia White Collection pieces and fabrics, but I do like to keep the walls and the curtains, all of that, quite simple, because I feel there's so much going on in terms of pictures and, you know, furniture and things, stuff of life, that really, if I started sort of, you know, having coloured walls or wallpaper, I think we'd all go crazy. So going down this long hallway, I was unsure what to do here because I've never actually had a home which has a long, dark hallway. It's light comes, it's borrowed light, and I've done these little tiny spotlights. So I thought, what does one do? It's a narrow space. It could be really gloomy and dark and boring. So the stripe is good because it elongates things. So I like that. And it's sort of almost got slightly Egyptian colours. Moss obviously likes it. But then I came across this wonderful, wonderful artist called Andrew Waddington during lockdown. I bought this picture by him. They're pencil drawings of a partly imagined England and a partly viewed in plein air England. And I didn't realise that he did this entire series, so I've been a mad collector. I've got many, many more. He does these lovely, lovely pencil drawings of nature, foliage, trees, birds, animals, but then he puts into it, man-made things, so disused buildings, pylons, things from different eras, sort of, rusty fences left over. I just think he is poetic, he is incredibly talented, and his art means a huge amount to me. So really, lockdown, as I said, came across him, and I then followed him on Instagram, and then we had many conversations. He did this wonderful one of Iona, and that's the monastery of Iona, and there's sheep, there's irises, there's a lovely mug, like an old ale mug, there's bitterns, it's just so atmospheric and so talented. I had them framed by Pendragon in these perspex frames so that the frame itself wouldn't take away from the lightness of the drawing. The focus is really the drawing. And the drawings are all done on 1920s old paper. He's got an old roll of paper that he uses. So there's a yellowing and a frayed edge to it. And all of that adds to the story, in my opinion. Here's a funny one with an ghastly Amazon old building here, and pylons, and a road sign, and here's the birds are still living amongst that with thistles and oak leaves. He's just really great. This picture I'd like to also say is one of I've got many favourite pictures, but this is a great one because it relates directly to where we go on holiday. So it's a Scottish artist called Callum Innes, and he went on holiday for a long time to the Summer Isles in Westeros up in Scotland, and he's a totally abstract artist, and he just painted the colours of the light on the sea, maybe the heather, maybe sort of bracken, maybe rock. And for me, that square box here, the closer you look, the more you see, it encapsulates the Summer Isles, which is where we go to as well. And he's got it in one. So I love that. Small little laundry room. It was a funny little space. I put in all the cupboarding, painted it in Sulking Room pink, and I found this incredible original Lutyens door. He was a fabulous Edwardian architect, and so I found that at Retrouvius and brought it here and totally illegally put it in, which goes onto the little balcony. So I'm super pleased with that. I've got my checkerboard floor, my nod back to Dutch architecture, or Dutch interiors, sorry. So my nod back to Dutch interiors, and again, my sprinkling of Delft tiles. Lots goes on in this room, although it's definitely the smallest room. So here we are in the bedroom. One of the things we really loved about this flat was actually the bedroom, because of the light. It looks over the shared gardens of all of the mansion block and through this tree, and you can see this in wintertime. You look through to the heath, and that's just heaven. And having lived in Islington before, which is a much more tightly sort of built up borough, we woke up and we went to sleep with the sound of traffic. And here we wake up to the sound of birdsong, quite literally. Now, I know that the heath has got lots of parakeets, and they're quite loud, actually. But seeing parakeets swooping and bossing each other around from one tree to the next is actually heaven. You lie in bed and you just look at it all. I don't have much of a personal garden, sadly, so that is one of the things I do miss. I've got a little balcony front and to the side, but I've tried to do my best at a little bit of box. It's not looking so good because I was away and it was very dry, but I try and have a little bit of flower boxes going, which is something I didn't do previously, so that's quite fun. This is Moss's chair. We've got fabrics from my collection, the Whippet again, and I'm not really a headboard fan. I like things to be somehow quite informal to a certain extent, so therefore the bedside tables are not matching. They're old tables that I happen to have. Robin's side has to have more shelves to it because he's a massive reader and he's always got 1,001 books going on at the same time. I need more space for all my little knickknacks and favourite things and photographs of the girls that need to be there. So we kept the room quite airy. We've put down just a hodgepodge of rugs. My parents gave me this rug. They brought it back from Pergamon in Turkey. It's a really lovely bergamot. And this was a bookcase my dad built for me probably 20 years ago. And funny, it just fitted. And it just is lovely to have a space in a bedroom where you can actually sit here, as Moss does, and here, and chat to somebody who might be in bed or waking up or whatever. And it's just really lovely having a bit more space to do things. This was a lovely picture that we inherited from Robin's family. They're Scottish and they used to have a very big house on the Dee and big pictures. And we always loved that one. It sort of slightly reminds me of a pre-Raphaelite painting where, you know, it's quite close up, the colours. I just like that. And it's although it doesn't sort of really marry up to all the very contemporary art that we've got, it's lovely to include things that come through the family and have something to do with us personally. And that's got something to do with us personally. My Staffordshire collection of Whippets. This is really one of the very, very first things that I bought. I was working at John Stephanidis earning not very much money at all. And I took all the money that I had and I saved up and I went round the corner to Chelsea Green. There was a lady, I don't think the shop exists anymore, who only did pottery and porcelain. And she had these in the windows. And this is way before, obviously, I had Moss. This must be 32 years ago. And I spent all the money I had buying these boys. And then my brother-in-law bought me these from the John Rosselli sale that happened in New York, I think about a year ago. So John Rosselli's estate was broken up and he had Whippets and other things. And so I thought that's a funny story. So they've met each other 32 years later. I bought this wonderful light from one of my favourite dealers is somebody called Rebecca Christie Miller, and she's got an exceptionally good eye, and she mixes really old things with also modern things. So this is just a 70s Murano glass light, and I love it. I've got many lamps and pieces from her, and she's just somebody who's got a really great eye. This is one of my favourite lights. It's something that stood on my grandfather. My grandfather was a writer and an academic in Germany, and I remember it standing on his desk, and it's lovely parchment, and it's got this lovely sort of hand stitching around it. I think it was a prototype. I think that's a 1930s light, and that's a prototype. And I just think it gives an exceptionally good light. It's a beautiful shape, and I love its history. I love that it's survived. I mean, it survived a lot of time, comes from Germany, and is again part of my heritage. So I'm super proud. So this was my actual first picture that I ever acquired. It's a John Singer Sargent. It's a pencil drawing of a composer, and it was an accident. I wasn't meant to buy it. I was young. I'd just come out of university, and my friend works at Christie's, and he invited me along to the opening and the sale. And I went along and I put my hand up, like to say I like it, or I know of John Singer Sargent. Whoops, it landed on me and I got it. I was completely shell-shocked, didn't know what to do, certainly didn't seem to have the money for it. And then I told my husband-to-be, this is what I've done. And he said, well, I'll help you pay for it, because I love John Singer Sargent. So we've always had it. We've always had it in our bedroom, and it's a lovely story. And I am a huge John Singer Sargent fan, so that's lovely. One of the things that's also interesting is I'm half German. So I was born in Berlin and brought up in Germany and then Scotland. And one of the things my grandparents really had a lot of was from a porcelain maker called KPM. It's Königliche Porzellanmanufaktur. And it was started off in Dresden, and then it was bought in the 18th century by Frederick the Great. And he had it at Sanssouci in Potsdam. And these lamps are on designs by Friedrich Schinkel, who was a great sort of 19th century architect, classicist architect. And I just think, I mean, they are so elegant and so amazing. And KPM only did a small run and doesn't do them anymore, and is also, been taken over now. But you'll see a lot of little vases, classicist vases. That would be a Schinkel design as well. And I think I'm drawn to classical things, partly probably because of my heritage, but I just think the lines of these is just stunning, the length of them. And so one of them I inherited from an uncle, and one of them I managed to find on Etsy. And I've been looking and looking and looking again, and I've never spotted another one. And then this is a sweet little thing. Here's one of the first pieces of Rose de Bourman pottery. So her pieces are incredible. I call it Pebble Dash. She'd probably be furious if she heard that. But it's basically, I don't know if it's a seal or what it is, but she creates almost these sort of prehistoric creatures. And she uses all sorts of strange pottery techniques to just give us the character of a creature without it being absolutely right. But I think the pebble dashing suits so well. And then this is my little Stella. It's a Royal Copenhagen white snowy owl made in the 70s. And I try and collect as many as I can. I look for them on eBay and Etsy and wherever, and I give them to friends, especially friends who have special events or they've lost somebody, and I say, this is your little snowy owl. You put it on your bedside table, and he or she, we always name them, will look after you. And they're all, of course, hand-painted. So although they're the same, each one may be a little bit different and has definitely a different character. So that's my little Stella, and she sits and she just watches over me, which I think is super nice. Here is a little, unfortunately broken, lovely, I think it's a Gio Ponti chair, which I inherited from my mum. I cannot believe how beautiful it is, and I cannot believe how stunning that design is. I now need to find somebody who's going to restore it for me absolutely perfectly. But that chair has been in my family all my life, and it wasn't broken in those days. And it looks fragile, but it was very, very sturdy. Here we have a lovely picture by John McLean. He was somebody who went to St Andrews University and studied history of art, and then he went to the Courtauld, and then he became a painter. And so he really, really looks towards American abstract expressionism, which is one of my favorite periods of art. And if I could, I would have a Rothko or I would have a Jackson Pollock, but unfortunately that's not to be. So this is as close as I can get, which is that, and I just think it's wonderful. And what was so uncanny is that I already had the table that's from the Virginia White collection. It's the Morris table in that colorway. I already had the Rose de Bourman cushion, and then I get this, and the lamp was here, and it all somehow, it works, and it's meant. And these are the happy coincidences that happen. I added this mirror. I bought this from Rebecca Christie Miller, and it's a lovely 19th century pier glass, I believe. So it would have hung between windows, really, in a much, much grander home than this. And I just love the way that it reflects the bay window. And so when you're lying in bed, you actually have a garden on both sides. And it's probably not the most accurate looking glass in terms of it's got the old mirror there. But that's lovely. And then here's, this is one of my chairs, again from my collection. It's called the Burlington chair. And it's really based on a set of chairs made for Lord Burlington at Chiswick House. And I saw them, they were gilt chairs and far more complex than this. And I just did a sort of pared back version, calling it the Burlington chair. And it's very sort of boxy and quite modern. So then the luxury of a big bedroom is followed by the luxury of an ensuite. So again, that didn't, I don't think we had that in our previous house. We did have one ensuite, but nothing as nice as this. So we added the door for this ensuite, and I changed a few things, and I just thought it's so lovely to have a big walk-in shower and a freestanding tub and a double basin. So those are the ingredients I really want. And I just somehow managed to put them in. And I did, all the flooring is marble and the sills are marble and the skirting is marble, because I just find marble is such a wonderful stone. It so keeps so cool in the summertime. We've got underfloor heating, so it's lovely and Haman-like in wintertime. But it's just, it's lovely. And this mosaic that we've got here is particularly nice if you've got wet feet and you're not slithering around the place. I'll show you my other tiles, which I'm a big fan of. So I'm a big fan of Delft ware and Delft tiles. And I found these again on eBay. And I think they're very early. I would have thought that one is the 17th century, probably this one as well. And they're called manganese tiles. And then I found these shells in Japan, and I loved the colours, and I brought those back. So that's nice. And here, compared to what other people did, is they've got frosted glass. And when we came to live in this apartment, they were frosted glass, and I whipped that out. We're not overlooked here, but here I just had a friend of mine had these made for me, and they're very much what you used in Spitalfields. So in olden days, way before having frosted glass and people not being wealthy enough for maybe coloured glass or something, they would just make these sort of grills, and that means that you're completely private, but you still get the lovely light coming through. And when it's super sunny and the light comes through, the grid of the floor is picked up by the light coming through this grill, and it reflects it on the back wall, and it's really beautiful. So I'm very happy. All the blinds and shades that you see throughout the whole flat and lamp shades are made by a friend of mine called Mariana Kennedy, who is an exceptionally talented interiors person, makes luxury interior furniture and lighting, and makes resin lighting, and also makes these incredible book cloth shades. So They're made to a very old formula. They've got a sprung system, and this is made out of book cloth. It's a Holland cloth, so both sides are the same, in a colour called lichen, which I think works so well. It's calm, it's serene, and it leads into the greenery from the outside. So I think that's really lovely. So every space for me is a space to put special, arty and favourite things. Nothing's off limit, not even the bathroom. So follow me. Here is one of my lovely collections of Rose de Bourman pottery, and she creates these creatures like we've discussed before. This, I imagine it's a sea lion on a rock, and he looks pretty disgruntled. He's got sort of, maybe he's telling us to go away, or he looks in pain, maybe he's calling to us. Here is a little otter. It's got its fish. Here is what I would say is a walrus, and it's got almost like a pilot fish sitting on top. It almost looks like a shark or something on top. And then this little boat, and it's got a luster, it's got the waves, it's got the smoke puffing out of the steam. And then here is a wise old owl, almost looks like an old barrister or something, or judge. I just think they are wonderful, and I would love to have even more. They're very, very, I think they're super, super desirable and full of character. Another artist I really love is Roger Hilton. So again, he was a modern Brit. He was a St. Ives artist, and he's exceptionally good as a line drawing artist. So this has almost got a Matisse-like quality. It's just a few strokes. I believe it's his wife Rose that he drew. But what I thought was quirky was you lie in a bath like that. And then I sort of, found that picture. I mean, I'd had the picture way before, but it's got that Matisse quality. Those lines are powerful. They show exactly what's going on. There's another one here. I try and keep it out of the sun. And this is a lovely Olivia Musgrave sculpture. She's a brilliant sculptress and works in bronze, and particularly again loves the classical era and going back to myths of nymphs riding horses. So now, shall we go look at the kitchen? So here we are in my little kitchen. So this really was inspired by 17th century Dutch interiors, the checkerboard floor that you see in paintings, lots of spaniels and fruit and vegetable all over tables, and then these sort of, high built-in traditional cupboards. Because this room doesn't actually get that much light, it gets light in the afternoon from between 2:30 to 5, but it's dark in the morning. I was really concerned about that, and I thought about the colouring, and then I decided that something like this powder pink or putty pink was a really good colour, because it's an organic colour, it's a warm colour, it's good even without any light on it, and it makes you feel warm. If I'd done something like a white or grey or greeny, it would have been much colder. So hence the pink, and I wasn't sure where to stop it, walls and cupboards, and then I thought, well, you know what, we'll do the whole lot. And a lot of people love it, and I love it as well, but it is a departure from my previous kitchen. Was completely white with white marble and couldn't have been more different. But this is very, very cozy. It's a lovely shape. It's a complete square. Everything is sort of enough, and actually my husband and I most evenings sit here and eat here together rather than taking things through to the dining room. It's incredibly cozy, particularly with candlelight and things. I'm going to put on this lovely light box that a friend of mine made called John Workman. This is 3 centuries of work, we say. It's based on a Claude Lorraine painting, and it's a Victorian idea of a lit up painting. So you'd have a candle behind a picture, sometimes with cutout windows, and it's in a 20th century Kodak light box from a darkroom. So it's three centuries really of thought in one box, and it's simply this Kodak box with a light bulb behind it, and he's painted with tar paint onto parchment paper this scene, which if you put it off, it's like just a black and white silhouette, and you put it on and it's got this incredible depth. So I totally and utterly love it. And we have that on and a candle on. This is a funny thing, is that Joseph Albers, we bought it for a client of mine who was in Switzerland, and she's not a yellow person. She loved the picture. And it's a centenary one for the Metropolitan Museum in New York, and but she didn't love the yellow, and so eventually we did a swapsy. I did something for her, and she gave it back to me, and I put it here. And I just thought, actually, yellow and pink, what a fantastic combination! Couldn't be better. I mean, they just really work together so well. So as ever, no area in my house is left without art and collections and pictures. It's just simply not big enough, my home. Here I've got, again by this phenomenal artist Rose de Bourmont, she really is phenomenal, these paintings which are glass on glass on glass. So she would paint on the front of glass, some detail on the back of glass, then have another piece of glass behind it and paint on the front and the back. So you have this 3D layering when you get close up to it. And again, it's all sort of, you know, partly realistic, like a fireplace with things on it, and partly completely sort of made up, like these sort of out of proportion Staffordshire Spaniel dogs with things running up the side of them. I just think they're really lovely. And again, it gives that glazing on the matte plaster walls, gives a sort of feeling of richness, which is really nice. Otherwise it could be a little bit dead, and it reflects the rest of the glazing that I've got on the other side. So here, this is again lovely Staffordshire pottery. These ibises I brought back from Egypt when I must have been 18, and they stood in my parents' bathroom, oh gosh, must have been for 30 years. And then when my mother died, I took them, and they now seem to be very, very happy here. This is a lovely collection of very, very early pottery. It's called Prattware, and it comes from the collection of Rupert Thomas and Alan Bennett. And I'm very, very pleased to have it. And it's such a lovely provenance as well, which I love. All of my kitchenware was made by a friend of mine. She's called Laura Hamilton, and her potting name is Bird in Hand. And I asked her to make a mossy green plate for me. Not you, Mossy. Mossy green. So she made me heaps of big plates and small plates and bowls. And then these I collected are Seth Cardew, and they would have been made in probably 1960. These would have been made, you know, 5 years ago, and they just work so well. And I just love this sort of dark, mossy green. Food looks great on it, and with old cutlery, it looks fantastic. My grandparents, I remember, had dark green pottery in their country house, and obviously that's been at the back of my mind. I wasn't aiming to copy it, but somewhere deep down, I must have said, you know what, actually, why don't we do something which is mossy green? I love it. She's a fantastic artist. And then everywhere, if you look up and you look into cupboards and you look here, there is again my typical pottery collection. So this is Trevor Corser. He was one of the big St Ives potters. He worked with Bernard Leach and continued at the Leach pottery. And he's got this very special style. I love it. It's very crude. He must have used a sort of palette knife or a sculptural knife to make these cuts. And it's called Tenimoko glaze, this Japanese glaze, which is like molasses. And here is a Leach pottery. You get the hallmarks from all of that. So I'm a big collector. I'm always trawling auction houses, eBay. That's a Seth Cardew. I'm big on Seth Cardew. A friend of mine introduced me to him. He's sadly departed now. And I managed to go meet him and buy a lot of things actually from him direct, which was so lovely. It's always the nicest thing if you have a personal relationship with a maker. And so that's not always possible, obviously, if you are collecting some people who are dead. But it's great. I like to mix in contemporary things amongst, obviously, a lot of old clobber. This is, my girls really love this picture, and it's me starting to go into more illustrative work, because I tend to collect, without meaning to, abstract works. This is very sort of, storytelling. And this is an artist called Fred Dewberry who I collect. And it's oil on board. And he worked normally in the sort of Essex, Suffolk estuary sort of borders. But this is actually 1950s Eastbourne, the south coast of England, when after the war, where people had left London and their houses had been bombed, and there were, areas of pure rubble. People had nowhere to live and it was dangerous. People had moved down to the coast of England and moved into railway carriages, so disused railway carriages. And in this case, so that still is, if you go down to Dungeness and Winchelsea Beach, I mean, nowadays they're super desirable, these railway carriages, and you can see them in World of Interior shoots, how very cool writers and creative people live in these. But there, it was not to be creative, it was to actually be safe and have something that was cheap. And you can see all the warehouses around, and these would be the railway carriages pushed out to sea, so that they wouldn't have to pay any land tax or anything. And they would build themselves a little wooden pier to reach it. They're hanging their laundry out and they're living on that. And it was a way of life. And I just think that encapsulates that really nicely. And it's such wonderful colours. Again, greens go so well. Here's another Howard Hodgkin. I'm a big Howard Hodgkin fan. He was a master printmaker. So although these are, limited edition lithographs or prints, every piece is hand finished and hand colored by him. And when you go really close up to it, you would think that's a completely original work. It's just because he had such a good printer and he was a master printmaker. So David Hockney is a fantastic printmaker. There are some who are fantastic. So here, just a tiny little snoop into my cupboards. They are a pure clutter shop. I'm sorry I haven't tidied up at all. I collect old glass. So I've got a real thing for even my water glasses will be, these are probably Edwardian or 1920s glasses. The feeling of using old glass and drinking from it, I think, is so superior. You can't put it in the dishwasher, sadly. But it's just got a lovely handle, and I love the thought that this has been around for 100 years and it's still so clean and modern and nice. And these are all the little pieces of Georgian rummers, and all of them are slightly different. I collect wherever I can find one. In fact, I've stopped, or I've mentally told myself to stop now because there is no space. So then here I've got lovely. Another one of my crazy collections is Eric Ravilius. Was obviously a wonderful artist of the 1930s in Britain, much revered. And he did a couple of sets for Wedgwood, and this is one of them. This is called the Garden Set, and then he's got the Travelling Set. And, they're very covetable. People love them, particularly in England, they mean a lot. He was a sort of much revered. Here's a little bit of Italy, a little bit of Murano. I took my girls to Venice and we went to Murano. We picked these up. So when I lay my table, there's always multiple colours and multiple things going on. Romilly's just come back from Peru and she brought me this crazy person. I don't know who he is, but he's much loved already. And off he goes into the cupboard. You can see I've got a bunny, I've got a parrot. Wherever you look, there will be little creatures peeping out. I don't think I'll be able to put this together for you very quickly, but this is such a lovely memory lane thing again for me. Oh yeah, I'm going to do it. So I come from a family of 4 daughters. We were brought up in Germany, and my mother was British, Scottish, and she was a big National Trust fan. We would always come over once a year and we'd go and trawl all the big National Trust houses on our way up to Scotland. One St. Nicholas, so St. Nicholas is the 6th of December before Christmas, and you get a stocking in Germany and you get a little gift. My mum was away in hospital, but she'd prepared. She'd brought us each a mug, and they were filled with sort of handmade cookies, and they sat on the breakfast table, and we all coveted them and loved them. And it took us a lifetime to work out the following. So I'm summer, my sister is spring, my elder sister is winter, and my sister Philippa is autumn. So that's how our birthdays are. It took us a lifetime to find out that it's the same landscape, but what the artist has done is they've done the tree in this to write the words. So this is winter. This says autumn. And because we were little girls, we had no idea summer. And we were always, I like mine more because it's got the blackbird. I like mine more because it's got this. We didn't realise it actually said that. All of these mugs got smashed, obviously over a lifetime of naughty little girls. My parents moved from Germany to Oxford, and these mugs didn't survive. And I've always had them in the back of my mind. I always thought I want them. Suddenly I found one on eBay, and that set me off. So I was trawling and trawling, just putting in more and more code words like National Trust mug, Seasons, Dawn Williams, 1978, branches, all the code words to get it. And it took me a long time to get them. And I've bought more sets for my sisters as well. So we all have a set. And it's one of the sort of happy times and happy memory times. So that's quite fun. So here we've got our little sort of entrance hall from the sort of centre of operations, really, from where everything goes off. So we go off to the living room, off to my study, off down to the bedroom quarters. And it's not huge, but I think it's wider than some passageways. And I've tried to make it a bit fun. I found these incredible Italian hall chairs. I'm going to say they're Venetian just for the fun of it, because I imagine them there. And I bought them from a really great dealer, and for not very much. So I was very, very pleased. I knew instantly they'd be perfect for here. This is a Spanish table, which I bought much earlier. And then this was a picture by somebody called Barry Cook. I didn't know it was by this chap called Barry Cook, who was a pop artist. He sadly died. He was from Cornwall, and he did his art with spray cans. So he sprayed this on, which is why it's got this weird fuzziness around it, and it's pure pop. And I just feel it has so much to do with my love for Bridget Riley. So I've put 2 of my Bridget Rileys here. These are called Shades of Grey, and it's a series of 4, and I've got 2 of them here. And they're handmade little tiny sort of ovals, and they are in, a myriad of shade of greys. And it, again, although it's absolutely perfectly aligned in a grid, there is so much movement just by changing the angle of the oval and also the shade of the greys. So I think they're lovely, and I love having these guys together. And again, it's totally irreverent having them with this sort of, old 18th century furniture, but so what? Little carpet from my parents, again, would have been a Turkish one. I think that's a Kazakh again. It's super nice. And then these wonderful wall lights, which I've got in the kitchen. And I've got here, I'll put them on, they're Vanini glass. We don't quite know how old they are. We know that they would have been made bespoke, probably I mean, for a house or maybe a hotel, but they're just wonderful. And it's got this lovely, lovely, you know, glass from Venice. And I think they're super and give a great light. And then here I was given actually as a gift from Mariana Kennedy this mirror, and it's got this mercury glass, which means it doesn't actually really reflect. But I thought it's quite clever to have that in a dark area because it of course reflects. And then that's just a plaster cast of Diana. She was the goddess of the hunt, and that's very much me. I'm always on the hunt for things and pictures, and that's the sort of, you know, the doorway into my studio where the hunting begins. For me, home really means a place to be really comfortable on my own, or, you know, with my family, very, very sort of, you know, comfortable. My home is not a showcase, my home is not a museum, my home is not something that I want to sort of show off or impress other people with. It's really something that is very, very personal. It's a space to retreat from the busyness of life, and it's got a certain Zen quality to it. So I find, although I've got a lot of things, actually I create quite a simple structure around me. So, you know, just white walls and very, very simple curtains, very simple window dressing, something that's quite calming. And then it's the belongings that really are the decoration. The other thing that's super important to me in my home, but also in the homes that I decorate for my clients, is really a place for people to have a big meal. So we have always, obviously I have 3 daughters, they've got friends. For us, home has always been about bringing people home and having home-cooked dinners or lunches and sharing, you know, sharing fun around the dining room table. So what we love in this home, and we didn't have it before we had a separate, quite large, more formal dining room, which was used a lot and had a lot of wonderful parties in it. But here, the dining room is really sort of, you know, part of the living room, and I think that's extra lovely actually. It means that you can sit here in the living room part, have your drinks, have your nibbles, have your chats before and after dinner, and then you just go, you know, a couple of meters behind me and you sit down, and it's a very, very simple dining room table, but it fits a lot of people. So home is a place to share with others and have a lot of merriment in, but it's at the same time, it's got a stillness, a quietness, a sanctuary-likeness, where it's just us and the things that we collect and cherish.
Thanks for watching. Go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content and shopping guides.